In-depth journalism in the Memphis community, the Daily Memphian is of Memphis, not just in Memphis, and seeks to tell the stories of this city. TheDailyMemphian.com. Truth in place.
What's up, y'all? We here with the first Tigers podcast of the season. I'm Frank Bonner, Memphis football beat writer for the Daily Memphian. I'm here with my guy, John Martin, college sports columnist, 92.9 host over at ESPN Radio. And, every week we're just going to be talking about college football. Obviously, big matchup with Memphis and Florida State. What are your thoughts, John?
Well, I mean, I think first of all, and you know this because you're in there every day. I mean, I think the idea of what this game was supposed to be has been very much distorted from what it actually is. Now, the best part about it is that you get $1.3 million, right? That will spend no matter what. But, you know, as I wrote earlier this week, this was supposed to be a shot at a heavyweight with no real implications if you lose. It's like, okay, top 10 team that's projected to go to the playoff. Worst case scenario, you get beat, you come back home. Everything's still in front of you in terms of playoff, AAC, whatever. Well, now Florida State has crashed out. They have had among the worst starts we've seen in college football, 0-2. Now, as I'm sure we'll get into, I think there are some ways to explain that and maybe why I'm not as out on Florida State as maybe Memphis fans would like me to be in this game, and why I still think it's going to be an immense challenge. But look, I think if you're Memphis, you have to look at this and say, we feel better about our chances because Florida State is 0-2. And that's just the facts of it. This game would have been, let's just start at the beginning of the year, probably Florida State, all things equal, minus 14, minus 16.5. You know, you adjust that way down because they've underperformed. And now Memphis is going in, as of today, as they're under a touchdown, right? This game is under a touchdown. It's at Tallahassee. So home field, you're basically looking at a field goal. So, you know, look, I think if you're Memphis, even though the implications have changed, it's harder in terms of if you lose it. You also go into it feeling better about your opportunity to do it because Florida State is maybe not the team that the world thought they were.
Yeah, I do think it's a tough break for Memphis because, you know, for all the points that you said in terms of what was supposed to be a top 10 team, and now you're going into an environment where Florida State's desperate.
Yeah.
You might get the best version of them.
That's right.
Because of the 0-2 start.
Yeah.
And then if you do lose, you lost to a team that the entire country is just crapping on right now, which it doesn't look good for Memphis. So I do think it's a dicey situation because if they would have beat Boston College, then maybe you still can catch them in a mode where they think, well, the Georgia Tech game was just a fluke. We're back at it or whatever. Right. Now they know the sky's falling.
That's right.
So now they're trying to climb up.
Yeah, look, I think there's two ways it can go. I mean, it's all right, we believe so much in Mike and we're going to rally around him and, you know, we're going to pull ourselves out of it. Or it's our season's been blown to smithereens. We aren't going to playoff. We're not in the top 25. We're not going to win the ACC. So what are we playing for? Versus Memphis, I mean, this game is everything for them. They know that. I mean, is there a world where they can lose it and then win every game in the AAC? Maybe, but it's not really that realistic when you have to go to USF. You have to go to Tulane. You know, North Texas, you know, they're kind of sneaky. You know, they're 2-0 and are scoring, you know, 50 points a game. So I think, you know, that's the part of this for Memphis that I think has changed. Is that, you know, you thought maybe this game would be some margin for error. Instead, because they appear to be more on your level, right? It's like, okay, we kind of have to win this now. And even if you win it, the unfortunate part of it, you mentioned the bad break for Memphis, it's not going to be this watershed, timeless, I'll never forget where I was kind of game because Florida State sucks. They're going to be 0-3, right? And so people are going to be saying Mike Norvell has to go, disastrous quarterback, disastrous XYZ. And so even if Memphis gets now you prefer to win, but again, you're not going to get those plaudits. You know, that's going to escape you.
Now, I'm not as far on that end as it seems like you are, right? I do think that beating Florida State, because, I mean, Boise lost.
They did.
To Oregon. So a win over whatever version of
better.
Florida State is
It's
better
than
a Boise loss. I know NIU, we'll get into it, but NIU and the Notre Dame win, but NIU still has a full season to play. Yeah. So I do think that a win against Florida State, although it won't be as big, is still a pretty big deal.
No, I mean, look, it's you haven't won a Power 5 game or a Power 4 game now on the road. I'm not counting Kansas in 2015 because Kansas was like bottom feeder, like you had more resources than Kansas in 2015 in football. I'm throwing that out. So we got to go back to 2004 when Memphis opened their season with a win in Oxford against Ole Miss with D'Angelo. That's how long it's been since Memphis has gotten a road win against a power opponent. If you want to talk ranked road win, you got to go back to that 93 team that just got honored this past weekend when they beat Mississippi State on the road in 93. So this is not something that – now, Memphis hasn't had a ton of shots, and there were some really bad years in there where they were playing, at Mississippi State under Larry Porter, at Tennessee, with a weird transition year of Tommy West. So it's very, very rare that Memphis has gone into these games with the vibes, with the team that is equipped to do it. I think that's the difference here. So, listen, there are things from Memphis I would like to see. That I feel like, I don't know who asked the question, but the fact that Silverfield was asked the question of, are you holding something back offensively? I thought was very interesting. People are watching this team and they're like, where's the rest of it? Like it doesn't look bad, right? It doesn't look like this team is bad.
It just doesn't look as explosive as
100%. Yeah, like you're kind of thinking, all right, Seth Hennigan's on 6 watch lists, top 10 offense in the country per the SP Plus. And then you kind of watch it and you're like, it's good. It doesn't feel like top 10 though.
But I will say though, since I've been on the beat, it has taken a few games for the offense to really get clicking. So I don't think this is different than any other year, right? Yeah. And so I think that's a part of it. Everybody will tell you that at this point in the year, defenses are ahead of the offenses and all that, especially when you've got a new group on the offensive line. Sure. In that game one, you lose Sutton Smith in the first quarter. That puts you in a flux.
So, no, it did.
So I agree with you in terms of it not being as explosive, but I'm not, stuff's not on fire.
Yeah, no, I mean, exactly. I mean, look, it's 2 games in, and really that North Alabama game, they clearly pulled off. I mean, they were up 30 whatever at the half, right? 31-0 at the half, I think was the score. So they knew they're not going to try to risk anybody. Sutton got hurt. They weren't going to do anything, stupid.
Right.
They weren't going to pull out, hook and ladder, offensively and try to wow anybody. They were just trying to get out of there without hurting anybody else or getting anybody else hurt. And then last week again, you cover the number. You put up 38. There were 7 pass interference calls. And I do think that's what's going to be different here, right? Because if you just take those pass interference calls that Cramsey was talking about and you just put those in the offensive yardage category,
then it looks,
the YPP is better, everything looks better. Instead those are penalty yardage against Troy. And so even though your offense created those penalties, you don't really get the credit. And that's kind of what he was complaining about, right? Like he was like, I wish those counted as explosive plays.
Because you drew it up and it worked.
But we don't get the credit for those because I think they have 16 yards for whatever reason. They go to 16 for explosive plays.
But getting into it, right, specifically what they've got to do to beat Florida State in this game, I think it starts with obviously you want to see the offense more explosive. Mm-hmm. But don't reinvent the wheel of the last 2 teams to beat Florida State, which is control the trenches.
That's right.
I mean, this defensive line for Florida State, everybody was talking about it was supposed to be one of the best in the country and all that.
Yep.
Well, Boston College and Georgia Tech put that to the test, and they won in the trenches. Memphis has to do that. Now, I'm not saying get away from your bread and butter, which is Seth Hennigan. You don't need to run the ball 30 times. But if you can open up the pass game by getting a 4-yard gain, a 5-yard gain here, I think that we'll see the explosiveness for Rock Taylor and Demir if the run game can get going.
Look, I think there's no, this is going to be, to me, if Memphis wins, it's a shootout. I just feel like, I mean, yes, you're going to try to run the ball. But I also think you're going to get some very different defensive looks from Florida State than you've been accustomed to the first 2 weeks. I mean, Cramsey was talking about it yesterday, right? Brock's getting double teamed. Demir's getting double teamed. So they're just taking what the defense gives them the first 2 weeks of the season. That's gone. Rock's not getting double teamed anymore against Florida State. They're going to at least start one-on-one, with whoever their best guy is. So I do think it's going to be more, you will see that open up. Like Memphis, to me, is going to have to pick it up in a way. That doesn't mean they're not going to run the ball. Doesn't mean they shouldn't run the ball. But I think in terms of the first two defensive performances for Florida State, this is where I kind of come in and I'm like, let's sort of open this up surgically a little bit. First game against Georgia Tech, it's weird. It's in Dublin. They don't get there until Wednesday or Thursday. Now, both teams obviously got there around Wednesday or Thursday. But I can kind of chalk up a weird outcome in Dublin to just being in Dublin. Like you're out of routine, your practice is all messed up. And then you come back home against Boston College, and this is the difference. Boston College had not played a game yet. It's a brand new coach in Bill O'Brien, first year there at Boston College. He had been at Bama. But they have a game of film on you that they saw it from Dublin because you played in week 0, and you have no film on them. And it looked like you had no film on them in that game defensively because they piled up 263 yards on the ground. And that's what they do. So I think there was a little bit of element of Florida State being caught off guard in that one, and maybe some weirdness. I'm just sort of making the case here, right? Like maybe that defense isn't as bad as we think they are, but they were caught off guard and at a disadvantage from a film perspective against Boston College.
Right, but do you think DJU is as bad as it has looked?
Well, I think that is the bigger question to me because, again, I can apologize for some of the defense, but I even said this before the season started. DJ and Mike might just be a bad fit. Like they might just, it's like I'm trying to think of like a bad celebrity couple, bro. That like Madonna and Dennis Rodman or something. I don't know, bro. Didn't they date? Didn't they have like
a quick second?
I think they dated, bro. I don't know, but they may be like Madonna and Dennis, and they're a bad performance away, from a divorce because you're already sort of starting to hear those rumblings down there with Brock Glenn. So I think look, if you look at Mike's quarterbacks historically, they all kind of play the same way, like they're like gunslingers, you know what I'm saying? Whether and Brady, I guess, wasn't as much, but he was familiar with him because he recruited him, Riley, obviously, here at Memphis, and Jordan Travis, last year. So DJ is definitely not that. He's not going to be that guy. He was at Oregon State a year ago in a scheme that was very tailored to him. That was like the run pass option with a lot of running, right? Damian Martinez at Miami was the Oregon State back last year. Jonathan Smith, the coach, is now at Michigan State. Like it all kind of broke perfectly for DJU in that system. And I think, listen, Mike's an accomplished coach. He's a proud coach. He probably said he sees this huge guy who looks the part, but I just don't think I don't think that's ever who he's going to be. So I think that is the bigger question is, all right, you go from 2 conference games to now this Memphis defense that hasn't been tested yet. Is this a get right for DJ, or is Memphis defense really going to be able to follow through and show that they're better than they were a year ago?
But if you're still doing those short passes that we've seen for DJ, especially like if they're doing the short passes in the middle of the field, you're playing to Memphis's strength defensively.
Absolutely.
In terms of those linebackers.
Yeah.
I don't really know if that's Florida State has no choice but to kind of go away from what they have been with him because the linebacker group with Chandler Martin and Herring and even Bryson and Matt Hudson, you don't really want to throw the ball in that area.
Well, DJ really only seems comfortable when it's a very simple throw, rolls to the right, hits a guy out, on an out route, and that's kind of the way they move the ball. And I haven't really seen anything with him at all over the middle. Now, they do get back Hakeem Williams, who Mike was really talking up this week at the press conference, the big wide receiver there. Said he's going to open up as much as anything else the run game, he thought, which is interesting because they haven't really been able to do that either. But that's the Florida State story to me. Defense has been the headline, but the defense has been on the field constantly, especially in that Boston College game. I mean, I don't think Florida State sustained a drive until the second half.
But that's their own fault, right? The defense was on. Not granted, the offense was, didn't stay on the field long when they had the ball.
Right.
But if you can't, I was looking at the thing, but I had it, right? So their first 6 third downs, they converted 5 or 6 of them. And the one that they missed was a wide open rear right where they just dropped.
Touchdown,
so that's basically 6 straight.
Yeah.
Which should have been six straight third down conversions.
I think I've seen Florida State fans are very they're over Adam Fuller. It's not just Mike, it's not just DJ. I mean, everybody's catching it down there. So I just don't like. It's more about Florida State in the context of playoff team, championship, not happening. Beating Memphis, I think that's more of okay, can they do that? I think so. I mean, I think this is a big ask for Memphis to go down there and beat a wounded team like this. That's still a 6.5-point favorite, given all their athleticism and NFL prospects. But look, I mean, Memphis has been in situations like this before. Granted, at home. I mean, I think that's the difference, right? I remember Ole Miss coming in here in 2015. I want to say Memphis was probably a big underdog, just like they will be going into this one, and it wasn't even close. That was a good Ole Miss team with Chad Kelly and Hugh Freeze and Kim Dichie and there was an NFL receiver on that team, and I'm blanking on his name, but Treadwell, that's who it was. It was Laquan Treadwell. Now he hasn't panned out, but at the time, everybody thought he would be that
college
dude.
and the NFL.
Yeah. So Memphis has done it before. And this would certainly be it would be a signature for Silverfield.
Now, I heard you talking about on the radio. I got to ask you, what are you leaning towards in terms of a prediction here?
I think Memphis probably gets down a couple scores in the first half, and they go tempo the rest of the way. I think it looks a lot like the Missouri game. Here's something freaky. This is the same spread and the same exact total as that Missouri game last year in St. Louis.
Only John Martin would know that.
Only I would know that. It was 6.5 and it was 52, which is where it sits today across the board. I think it could look a lot like that. Memphis did, I think, at one point take the lead in that game, 10-7, and then it was kind of just the Brady Cook and Luther Burden show.
Yeah, but they had their chances in that game.
They did.
Yeah.
They were. And I think Memphis will be live in the game. I don't think this is from any standpoint going to be some kind of blowout, some kind of embarrassment. Like Florida State's not that team. And when you're talking about a line of 6.5, winning by a touchdown is not a blowout, right? That's not like, oh, you never had a chance. I assume Memphis will be live in the game. I just think I'm gonna lean on Mike is just too good of a coach to start 0-3. It's unfortunate that Memphis is third in line here.
Right.
It's a bad break, but I just think they find a way to come together. Otherwise, their season is completely over. And Mike can't get fired because he's owed $63 million if they buy him out, which they're not going to pay. But it would be, they'd be burning mattresses and throwing them out of towers down there.
No, I agree with the whole the desperateness of this game for Florida State is probably going to have them lock in whatever the best version of Florida State is going to be this season.
That's probably winning by a touchdown over Memphis, right? If their best, at their absolute. Now, if let's just say they are not their best though, then we're talking about Memphis going down to Tallahassee and doing this. But if they are at their best and they're like locked in to try to salvage whatever they can of this season, I do think Memphis will probably be on the wrong end of it.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see, right? If Memphis starts a big explosive play, get a touchdown,
right,
and then Florida State,
right,
5 plays and a punt,
yes,
then that could create.
I'm gonna be real with you. What gives me pause is last year. It's Memphis is basically the same team. Yeah, the defense
from a roster.
Yeah, like new DC. Okay, a couple of new pieces have subbed in, but you did have Simeon Blair last year. It's not like you didn't have any players on that defense. So you might be better at the margins in a couple of positions, but we're really banking on, okay, the growth of certain guys in a new scheme, and that's going to be the difference for the most part. But I think about Memphis. At home, they were a 5-point dog to Tulane. They had the game. It was a massive game. They were a huge favorite to win, and they end up blowing it there at the end. I think about the SMU game at home, another big one that you really had to have, and unfortunately Memphis really I don't really recall them being a threat to win that one. So I haven't seen a big game performance from this iteration And I think, you want to tell me Iowa State, a bowl game that who cared about it? I don't know. Like Memphis, certainly more so because it was here in Memphis. So I think, if you want to use that one, I'll kind of listen to it. But I'm talking regular season. Everybody's all in. I haven't seen it in a while.
But I think when you've got the better quarterback, you have a shot. And I think Memphis has the better quarterback in this game.
Yeah.
And so
he needs to be that.
Well, I mean, he has to play to that level.
I need that legacy, Seth. Give me 350 yards and 3 touchdowns.
Yeah, he needs to. And in order to do that, you need a big game from Rock.
Yep.
You probably need Demir to at least take the top off the defense
for sure.
on one play.
For sure. And you got, he's used the tight ends quite a bit this year too. Yeah. That can be, they're not lacking for options, bro. I mean, that's the beautiful thing about it is they got multiple ways, and that's what Norvell was talking about. He knows. He was talking about how he watched the film first 2 games and they haven't dipped into the menu. He knows.
Yeah, see, everybody knows that. Going back to the obviously everybody knows
the media knows.
Memphis hasn't just opened up their playbook all the way.
Trying to play possum over here, man.
Hey,
I get it though.
When you're playing against North Alabama and Troy,
exactly. So I do think that's why I think that this will be a shootout because that's how Memphis is. I mean, I do think Florida State will probably try to control the clock a little more, just because it's the nature of their DJ. You can't go downfield, But I do think they'll probably be able to put up points on Memphis, and I think Memphis will answer for a good part of the night.
So big picture wise, how important is this in terms of the other group of 5 teams? I know you had a column out that you kind of said that the top of the group of 5 is a little bit more crowded than expected heading into the year.
Yeah, I mean, it's massive because, Boise State is the favorite right now because they played Oregon so closely. And if you look at Boise State's schedule, it's a joke. It's a joke. I mean, they have UNLV at UNLV on October the 25th. And if you're a Memphis fan, you're pulling hard as hell for UNLV in that game. Because if Boise wins it, it's hard to imagine them losing the rest of the way. They have Washington State at home. They have Oregon State at home. I mean, not that Oregon State's good anyway. Oregon State's a mess. But they get all their big games at home outside of that UNLV game. But the problem is, if UNLV wins,
then
they're taking Boise's place, right? Because it's going to be a race to the finish in terms of the Mountain West and the AAC. The good news for Memphis on some level is that they get Tulane, who is fighting for that same spot. They play each other. They get South Florida that's playing for that same spot. So they do control this on some level. But Liberty's right there, who plays nobody. Tomato cans up and down the schedule.
Yeah, but Liberty's they've got all their eggs in one basket, right? It's undefeated or bust.
That's it. Yeah, they lose one game, they're out. No question.
It doesn't matter.
Texas State is one. They beat the dog out of UTSA last weekend.
And that one's interesting because how much of that hurts Memphis' strength of schedule we're talking about because they,
No, it's UTSA a tangled web because you don't want UTSA to just necessarily win it because that means they're better. But you also don't necessarily want them to lose it because it hurts your strength of schedule. And here's the thing about Texas State.
I think you did want UTSA to win it, though. Because if UTSA wins and you beat, then whatever.
Well, you get them, and you could say that's a better win. And the problem is Texas State has Arizona State Thursday. So if they win that one, and I believe it's at Texas State. So that's a Power 4 win if Texas State can get it. So they would you lose, Texas State wins on Thursday, you're passed up by Texas State. So now you're not even talking about Boise State anymore. Now you're talking about now you need Texas State to lose a game, right? Which I haven't looked at their schedule closely because, they're kind of on the outside. But they would be right there with Boise for that spot. Again, it's just so crowded, man.
And then doesn't NIU, don't they play NC State on their schedule?
NIU plays, they're another one. They play NC State, but they're a big dog in that one. They're an 11-point dog. So if they lose that one, then
whatever. But I'm just saying that's another
if they beat them, though. But
they were a big dog against.
Are they going to win every damn game where they're a double-digit underdog? If they do that, then you're cooked anyways.
No, I don't. NIU. Big win for Notre Dame, puts them in the conversation.
Yes.
But I think at the end of the season, NIU's probably going to play itself out.
But see, I think that is I think this first 2 weeks of the season has been a real eye-opener, or it should be, for Memphis. You come into this thinking, all right, if we just win the AAC, we lose to Florida State, maybe we can afford one more regular. If we just win the AAC, though, we're in. Wrong. Because it ain't even just Boise State anymore. It's Boise State. It's UNLV. It's Texas State. It's Northern Illinois. I mean, you got it's Liberty. You got at least 5. We haven't even talked about the AAC teams yet, right? But again, that's all chips fall where they may because you were going to play them and it's all going to sell itself out. But that's 4 or 5 teams I just mentioned that we, at least 3 of those we weren't even discussing before the season started. So I think that's the part where if you thought this was just a walk-in and win the AAC, it ain't that. It's a lot harder. And if Memphis did make the playoff, it's not something that should be taken for granted every single year just by winning the AAC. It's going to be very, very hard to do.
Well, no, I mean, like you said, I think the first couple of weeks have shown that. The first couple of weeks have shown that obviously it's not playoff or bust. And we've talked about this before, that if they win the AAC and miss the playoff,
you can. Yeah.
You still tip your hat off for winning the conference.
Yeah, I mean, it all depends kind of how it all shakes out, I mean, how competitive the losses are, how the offense progresses through the season. But if, you lose to Florida State and then you lose one of, Tulane or South Florida, but you win the AAC title game, like, you're not going to make the playoff, but you'll make a nice bowl and you'll be a 10-win team. Again, I'm saying 2 losses here. Or 3 even, but you win 10 games and have the bowl game. It's hard to be too mad at that for a Memphis football program.
Yeah, well, we'll see where it shakes out
sir.
After this week. I think this game will say a lot about the conversation, whether it's a win or a loss, and where
it will
Memphis can go.
Because if Memphis wins, then you feel good about anybody else.
Yeah.
Even if Florida State is down, they still have dogs, right? Where the rest of this conference, not nearly as much. Right? You're just not going to have to go through a team that has the raw talent of Florida State.
Now, USF did play Alabama.
They did.
The score, forget the score. We know what it was if you watched that game.
That was competitive.
That was competitive. They were in there. So you wonder what you're going to have to face with USF.
Yeah, that coach is probably gone after this year. I mean, he's really good. And he could probably use that quarterback as leverage. Byron Brown. He's a beast, man, and he tore Memphis up last year when he was a freshman here in Memphis. So that's going to be a tough one, But they're all tough, and if you're going to be a playoff team, you got to win road games in your league. That's just the truth.
Well, we're going to wrap this one up. Good chopping it up with you, John.
Yes, sir.
You can catch me at Frank_Bonner, #2 on Twitter. You can catch John.
John Martin 929 on Twitter.
Yes, sir. I'll have a couple of more stories this week. Former Tiger who lives in Tallahassee. Talk to him. So, that'll be in the Daily Memphian tomorrow or so on.
Dig that.
Appreciate y'all for listening.